And we're live. All right, guys, here we go. Today is part two of our special guest, Chris Dumas, coming to us live from Atlantic City. Yesterday, we had to cut the live short, but we're back because he's here to tell his fire stories. So let's go. We're ready, Chris. The floor is yours, my friend.
All right, so yesterday I left off, pretty much I left intake craft, the facility that sends you to your prison. And I was saying how I was on the borderline of I was 26, so they could send me down youth or they could send me to adult. I got lucky and I was sent up to adult. I was sent to a place called Southern State. When I first got there, that was my first taste of prison, and it wasn't anything like I thought it would be. It was trailers, it was a big compound, everybody was free to roam. Guys were on electric guitars, like on the middle of the comp. It was like totally different than what I thought it would be.
Crazy.
Um,
Okay.
yeah, it was crazy. The things they were allowed to have then. A lot of that stuff got taken away. Actually, Southern State shut down now, but a lot of that stuff got taken away over the years. But I stayed on that compound for about 2 months, and right away when I got in there, I was like, I'm gonna say I was full fledged into the prison life because I knew it to be one thing, and I thought I needed to make a reputation for myself. So right away, I was like, no nonsense, let's go. Whatever it is, it is. And the people I was running with accepted me straight from the door, and they had a little something going on at the time, and I got involved in that. Which kind of gained me points with some of the ones that were from the island and kind of looked down on Americans being in that association. But anyway, needless to say, I very quickly in that 2 months I got into a lot of shit. Luckily, I wasn't caught and put in lockup. A lot of stuff was orchestrated, and it wasn't stabbings or anything like that. It was more fist fights, and it took place more within the association than it did out, so it was controlled. But about 2 months went by, and slips were being dropped on me. I was moving too fast. I was moving too fast. I was doing too much, and I think that was a threat to some people. Um,
Chris,
there
what is
was
a
also
slip?
so like I don't know what they call them in different prison systems, but a note dropped in a box, to the police basically,
Oh,
and
okay.
they're not usually anonymous, and they say, this guy Chris is doing X, Y, and Z, and
Oh,
and
so
they try to get
somebody's snitching on
right. So
you. Wow.
they're snitch basically trying to get me out of there
Yeah,
because
crazy.
I came real strong. I came real aggressive. I was like I said, I was 26 and I just had this mentality of like, go, go, like, and a lot of the white guys that stepped to me, I think, were intimidated because of the aggression, the way that I was, and I wasn't following their, thing. Like so, I don't know to this day who dropped the slips on me, but I know there were multiple because I was told by the sergeant. So what happened was they called me down center, and I had no idea what was going on. I got down center, and they put me in the hole in a lockup cell, and they said you're going to be transferred. And I
Okay.
said, for what? And they didn't give me any reason. They just said you're going to be transferred. So I think I sat in that holding cell for 2 days. It was really hot. It was just like a messed up place, but I mean, I only spent 72 hours, I believe I spent in there, and they picked me up. Still, I don't know where I'm going. I can't reach out to my family and tell them. I can't get on a phone, nothing. I'm trying to get word out. There was porters coming in, and I'm trying to get word out to my people to tell them, yo, you make this phone call for me. And that happened. somebody, called my family and said, look, he's in lockup. He's not in any trouble, but they're transferring him. And they wanted to know why. I couldn't explain why at the time. I didn't have paper and pencil. I couldn't write a letter. I couldn't do nothing.
Okay.
So they transferred me. So they transferred for me over to Riverfront, which was it was in Camden. They tore it down in 2008, and it was a free for all. It was a wide open prison. This was prison. Like when I walked on that compound, it was prison. Um, so I stay on that compound for about 6 months, and the same thing started happening. Slips are being dropped, but now I'm more involved with the drug game. Like, I have my hands in things, and now I know why the slips were dropped because people owed. And actually the crazy part was the guy that actually dropped the slip, I had paid his debt for him. He owed somebody above me, and I was hustling for the guy, but he owed somebody above me. And what I did was I paid his debt off, and I said, listen, don't sell him anything else. Don't front him anything else. Just, and I told the guy the same thing. Somehow or another, the guy maneuvered around me. He was supposed to pay me back little by little. We set up a plan in Canteen. Just pay me back this much. I was trying to be a good dude to him. And, I knew the guy. I had like a little relationship with him. Well, he didn't pay the bill. He wasn't paying me. And to tell you the truth, I wasn't going to do anything. Even though I was aggressive at that time, I wasn't going to do anything to that guy because it would mess up what we had going on.
Okay.
So I was just going to take it as a loss because I came out of my pocket to pay for him. But it wasn't a very big bill. It was like $100. And I thought, listen, if I give you, a list for $25 every 2 weeks, you could pay me back my money and everything's okay. He didn't want to do that, and I think he got scared, and he dropped the slip on me and got me out of there. So I ended up at Southwood, the last place I wanted to go. I didn't want to go to Southwood because I had heard of it. I heard the COs were really bad down there, and like Riverfront was so laid back. All the cops were from Camden. I mean, it was a beautiful place to do time in. And I was just like, man, damn it, man. I can't believe that I'm getting transferred out of here now. And, 2 transfers in less than a year. And now I'm going somewhere else. I was able to contact my family on that one, and my family started asking questions, and they're like, "What are you doing? Like, you can't sit still. We're making arrangements to come to visit, and I can't tell them what I'm doing."
Yeah.
But it was just something I was doing. I was hustling, and that's what it was, and that's how I was going to get my money. So I got transferred to Southwood. By the time I got to Southwood, a letter was written from Southern that preceded me. It made it there before I got there. So when I came on compound A, which is reception, it's reception, but it also has 3 other tiers where you can actually stay on that compound. So when I got to reception and I walked in, my people approached me automatically because they knew I was coming. And they said, yo, look, man, it's a little different here. The COs, are on some bullshit and they will fuck you up. And there's a body count, a very high one here with the cops. And at that time, the cops were killing people left and right. So that really didn't register because again, my mind was young and it was just like, okay, that's prison. That's what it is.
Yeah.
So I remember walking onto the tier when I first got to Southwood. They put me on phase 3, and phase 3 is for bigger time. So you have 3 phases, 1, 2, and 3. 2 is for like workers, 1 is for like smaller time, and 3 is for like guys that are coming out of ADSEG lockups, stuff like that, problems, and big time. Like a lot of lifers that left Trenton they come down to Southwood and they finish out their life there. There's a lot more schooling programs, stuff like that to offer at Southwood. So guys want to get down there for that reason.
Okay.
Uh, but I did notice when the Trenton guys would come, they would want to go right back to Trenton because they, heard it was one thing and they got there and it was something else. And then they were stuck because Southwood, they just don't, the other two prisons I was in kind of, were more laid back and they worked with you. Southwood, they don't work with you. It doesn't happen. So I'm in Southwood for about 2 weeks. I remember going to my cell. The first day I got in my cell, I'm praying as I'm going up the steps because the cop down at the desk says you're in cell so and so up on the top tier, and I'm praying, let it be a white guy or a Spanish guy, just please, because I live better with them, and that's just how it is. Like I said, in New Jersey we intermingle, but when it comes to living with somebody, I rather live single cell, but we don't have that option in Southwood. So I remember praying, like, let this be a white guy or a Spanish guy, please. Like, I got up in a cell and on the bottom bunk was a white guy. And I was like, thank God, as soon as I walked. And he actually said, thank God, too, because he didn't know who he was getting.
Yeah.
So this guy was a first timer. I won't mention his name. He was a good guy. He was a first timer. He had at that time 2 years in on a 12 with an 85. And 12 with an 85, meaning you have to do 85% of your time. So he was fresh, but he had 2 years on that tier. Now, I come in the cell and basically break down my stuff, and we have our little conversation. And, this is who I am and this is who you are, and where you come from. He was from up north. We didn't know any of the same people, but he seemed like a good enough guy. I noticed right away he had everything and anything that you could have in that cell. I noticed that right away. He offered me stuff. I refuse all the time because I was taught, don't take anything because there's usually something behind it.
Chris,
Um,
let me ask you, could you describe like what he had to sell?
like so he had a radio, he had a boom box on a shelf, like he had an older school boom box that they didn't sell anymore, so he was able to buy that second hand off of somebody. So that told me right away that like this guy's got a couple dollars because he's moving around and he's you know and I mean, the room was full of canteen. It was decked out with the Muslim rugs, like everything was carpeted. It was really clean, and I like to keep myself. And I said, "This is great. This is how, And the first couple nights we talked, and we got to common grounds, and I started to realize that the kid, the way he did his time was getting high. That's the way he did his time. And it didn't take long. It took about 2 or 3 days for him to, put that out there. Hey, look, man, I got this. If you're interested, like I'll throw you some. And down prison, I stay away from drugs. I stay solid because, one, I learned to never, get into those kind of situations because it always creates that I don't care what kind of money you're making, and I'm an all-in guy. So if I start getting high, I'm going to mess up the money, and that's how it's going to go. And I know that about myself. So I say, I'm here, I'm clear-minded, I made it through the county, I'm healthy again, I'm at my regular weight, I could start working out, and this is where I'm going to be for a while. I knew that, unless people started dropping slip. But at this time, I knew I had to move a little different, a little quieter, and try it a little different. So a couple days went by, and I remember the white guy asking me, he said to me, and I took it as disrespect. He said to me, some white guys down in the day room, so the way they worked it was you had 3 yards a day during the summer. You would get a night yard. you have 2 yards a day during the winter. You don't get the night yard because it would be dark. So, like 9 o'clock, they would pop the doors and we would get 2 hours out, come back in, eat lunch, sit in a little bit, and then they would pop them again for another 2 hour yard, and we would go out. This was the summertime, so I would get that third record at night. He would never go out. He would stay in the cell. And I remember him asking me, he said, listen, some guys down, when you go out to the next yard, they want you to bring your paperwork out. And in my mind, I owed my paperwork to nobody except my association. And they had already seen me. They knew I was coming, and they already knew I was there. But out of respect, I brought my paperwork down. And I remember sitting in front of their leader, and he was a big white guy, and I think they were SPS, state prison skins, and that's what we have in Jersey. You have the AB, you have that, but these particular group was SPS. So I brought my paperwork down, and I said to the guy, there was 6 guys sitting around him. I sat at the table and I put the paperwork down. I said, listen, I'm doing this out of respect. I don't need to show you my paperwork. And he was like, who do you run with? And I told him who I ran with. And he goes, okay, I understand that. He looked at my paperwork. I pretty much snatched it back and I went my own way. A day or two went by after that, and I could see that my bunkie was trying to get into that group of people. He was working his way into that group of people because they were always at the door. When they were on the yard, he was always around them. And, I was around my people on the handball court. We were over here and they were over there, and the blacks were by the basketball court. And, I watched them outside, and I started putting two and two together, and I knew he was about drugs. So the question came one night, I think it was probably a weekend, and he said to me, hey, Chris, man, listen, I've been buying drugs from a certain person, and I see you walk around the yard with this person. Now, the person he was talking about, we're going to call the Wizard. That's what he goes by. The guy had 40 plus years in, and he knew some of my family. So he came from the same neighborhood as my father came from, and he knew some of my family. So my bunkie had seen me speak to this guy, and that was my bunkie's connect. And so what my bunkie essentially did was he said, listen, man, I'm going through these white guys because the Wizard won't directly deal with me. I'm going through these white guys, and they're taxing me. They're taxing me on these drugs that I'm getting. I see you talk to them. So do you think it's possible that you go and get them for me instead of these white guys going to get them? And I thought about it for a little bit, and I know the guy got money, and I'm like, why not? The guy's like, I'll pay you, and when I say street to street, that pretty much means like Western Unions. Like, he's not going to give me canteen. He's going to put cash on my books. Okay. So he's like, look, every time you pick up, this is what I'll do, or I'll pay you weekly, but every single day I need this pill picked up. And it was an Oxycontin 80. How the Wizard pulled that off, I don't know. He had 44 years in. So, he had a lot of ailments. He walked with a cane. Guys really respected him. But he was able to get, I believe it was 2 or 3 Oxycontin 80s a day. And he would cheek the Oxycontin, and cheeking is just, yeah. What cheeking is. Most people do. Putting it in your mouth and sliding past, when you do the whole mouth open thing, being able to make it past the cop. So he was able to do that. I think the cops really didn't mess with him much just because of his time. Lifers are respected a little bit more over there. So he had no problem bringing it back. So I agreed. So my next mission was to step to the wizard and see if he would agree. So I stepped to the wizard the next day in the yard and I said, listen, man, I said, my bunky's been, getting X, Y, and Z from you. And basically he's getting taxed. And the wizard right away cut me off. He said, listen, he said, I'll deal with you because these guys he's sending to me, they're shady. I don't want to deal with them, but I also don't want to deal with your bunkie because he's like a fresh fish. Like he doesn't know what he's doing. He don't know how to move. And, at least the guys that he's sending know how to move. But I know they're taxing him. And that's actually taking out of my pocket. So,
Yeah.
yeah, yes, I'll deal with you. Now, uh, just because of the interaction I had with these guys, they knew I was serious. So I knew that I had no worries. I knew that I could take that hustle over and I didn't have to worry about them. I did think in the back of my mind, maybe something could happen. And when it comes to drugs and me making a choice to do that, I can't really bring it to my association and say, this is what I'm doing because I'm a man first and I'm making that choice to do that. And to bring heat on them isn't right. So I knew I was taking this on by myself. But in the back of my mind, like I said, I knew they weren't going to step to me. They weren't going to say anything. So automatically they were cut off. These guys were cut off, and now I'm going and getting this pill for this kid. So it was like clockwork. Every morning when they would call yard at 9 o'clock, I would go out, and my routine was the wizard would take a couple laps around the yard with me, and as we were walking around the yard, he would slide me the pill that was already paid for. The kid would West him, he would do what he had to do, and he would slide me the pill, and my bunkie would be in the cell waiting because, like I said, my bunkie never came out. And when I say waiting, he'd be waiting. Like when I come, like after I would get the pill, I would do my workout, I do my routine, and I get with my people in that 2 hours. We discuss whatever we discussed, and we would head back in to lock in. And when I'm coming in, my bunkie's at that door, at that glass, waiting for me to come in and waiting for that pill.
Yeah.
So I get the pill, I bring it in, and things are going smoothly for a couple weeks. I'd say the third or fourth week, I go out to get his pill, and it's clockwork now. It's easy. The money's landing, and it's good money. The guy's paying me good money. He's giving me like bonuses. He's like, dude, I'm gonna throw this in on top. And do you also want this, and this on canteen? And I'm like, do whatever, dude. Like, I got a TV for you, by the way. Here, he had extra TVs under the bed. Like anything I wanted, this guy would do because I'm getting what he wants. And he's starting to see, like, man, and I didn't really get into the politics with him because he was going to make his choice and he wanted so bad to be with those people. But he seen what they were doing to him, and I wasn't going to try to talk him out of it. I was just going to continue this hustle, keep him as a good bunkie, and keep it moving. That was the plan. So on this particular day, I remember it was a beautiful day. I think it was in May, and I went out to the yard to meet the wizard, and me and the wizard start walking like normal, and the wizard looks over at me and he says to me, "Hey Chris, did you see my bunkie by any chance last night?" And I said, "What do you mean? Did I see him?" "Did you see him? Did you happen to see him? Because he came home all fucked up last night. We call ourselves home. He came home all fucked up last night." And I looked at the wizard and I said, "Yeah, so that's what it is. What do you?" And he goes, "Nah, man, he was really fucked up." And I said, "What do you mean, really fucked up?" And he goes, "Well, look, he's dead. He's dead." And I said, "What do you mean he's dead?" And I remember stopping on the track, and the wizard stopped on the track, and he looked at me and he goes, "Yeah, he's dead. He's in the cell now." And I said, "What do you mean he's in the cell now?" I said, "Look, bro, I've been up since 7 o'clock in the morning. There's been no medical in here. There's been no commotion. I'm at my window waiting for doors to pop, going to breakfast, doing everything I do. You know, there's been no commotion." "No, Chris, he's dead in the cell right now. He's been dead since last night." And I'm like, my exact words to the wizard were, "This is where I spin off." And that's what I said to him. "This is where I spin off." So I spun off. I walked the track a couple times, and I'm trying to register this in my mind. I'm saying to myself, man, this can't be true. It just, I couldn't register it. I'm like, this can't be true. The way Southwood is set up on the yards, the windows to our actual tier are on the yard. So the wizard's window was on the yard. He lived on the bottom floor, and it had the skinny windows, and you can actually see into your. So, like, for example, if the wizard didn't come out, I could go out the yard and knock on his window and kind of talk to him through his window. So I looked over at the window, and on the top bunk, a foot with a sock on it was in the window. And I look, and he goes, "Yeah, that's Star." And I say, "Man, I'm spinning off right now, bro. Just, so I'm walking around the yard and I'm looking at this foot. I keep looking at this foot. Every time I go by it, I'm just praying it'll move." I'm like, man, no, there's no way. As this is going on, the wizard is telling other people, he's, other lifers, guys that I'd say 80% of the tier was lifers. There was 186 guys on the tier, and 80 and I'd say 90% were lifers. So he's telling other lifers. So now watching guys go over to the window and they're looking in. And I'm like, man, this is real. This might be real. This might be real. So I do a couple more laps around the track, and my people are sitting over by the handball courts, and I head over to them and I sit down with them, and I'm quiet for a second. And one of them said, "Yo, man, what's going on?" Like, they noticed something was up right away. And I was like, "Bro, I'm not 100% sure about this, but this is the story I just got." And supposedly Star is a young white kid who doesn't know up from down. He's a blood. He's got like 2 months to max out. He had like a 3 flat. He's like a 25, 26-year-old kid. He didn't know any better. He was scared. He jumped into the bloods, and, they pretty much just played him out. They let him in. They let anybody in Jersey. And, he was a stunt dummy, but he was harmless. He was a harmless kid. Now, when I think back, when I was seeing the wizard and I was doing transactions, I had noticed every once in a while the wizard with a black eye or something like that. But I would never ask him that question. I would just leave it as it is, because we mind our business. And come to find out, the wizard and Star had been bumping heads as bunkies for a while. And what happened was, the yard lasted until they called it. And when they called the yard, we immediately go in, and a couple guys run straight to the desk, and they tell, they tell what they see. So I head straight up to my cell. So, like I said, I'm on the top tier. The wizard cell is across from me on the bottom tier. So I have like a straight shot at his cell. So as I'm coming up to the door, like usual, my bunky's in the doorway. He's waiting. He's waiting for his bill. And I walk in, and as soon as I open the door, I said, "Dude, you're not going to believe this." And he goes, "Oh, man," right away. He knew something was wrong. And it was all about that bill. And he goes, "Oh, man, he didn't have it. What happened? He couldn't get." Nah, bro. he didn't give it to me. Supposedly his bunkie is dead in the cell right now. And he said, well, what are you talking about? And he goes, who, Star? And I said, yeah, supposedly he's dead in the cell. So now we're both at our door. Our doors are locked now. We're on everything's locked down because the word got out. Police are rushing in, the medics are rushing in, everything's rushing in. And the kid can't think of anything except his pill. He's pacing back and forth and he's flipping out about the pill. And I'm like, like, dude is dead down there in the cell, from what I know.
Yeah.
And after a little while, my bunkie comes over and we do like the double head in the cell thing. Like, I'm up high, he's a little shorter, and he's looking. We're both trying to look through the skinny window, and we're looking down. And, some time went by. They had to do their formalities. They had to go in the cell, this, that, the other. And I'd say at about 10:30, they pull the body out on a gurney. And when they pull the kid out, he has nothing but shorts on and a pair of socks. And the kid is blue. And you could see he's blue. He's dead. And he's on the gurney. And they pull the gurney out about 5 feet away from the cell. So now he's kind of in the middle of the tier. There's 186 people that all have a view from their window of this kid. Some have better views than others. I had a pretty good view to the point where I could see he was purple, blue. And so we're looking out the window and I'm like, man, this dude's really dead. Like, this dude's really dead, but how did that happen? Like, what the hell happened? And my bunkie had brought up, they've been having problems. And I said, I think they have been having problems. And I said, yeah, but what happened? How did this happen? So, they tape off, that section, that cell. They tape it off with the crime scene tape because, they have to do their official everything. The crazy part is that body stayed on that gurney for the next 5 hours
What?
on the tape. Yeah. They didn't move it. They didn't bring one of them rolling curtains in. They didn't bring anything in. They just left the body on the tier.